Make some noise for your host, Kid Copious.
What up, perps? Kid Copious, back in the bunker. Purple State Party? You know what we're doing here, man. This is all about America. The center, common sense, and poppers. Oh, we had a misfire on the popper. Emergency popper. There we go. Yeah, all right. Cool. So I'm in a new setup, so it's a little bit getting used to here. Same backdrop, same bunker, new computer and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Trying to do a better job. So anyhow, we'll start it off as I've been doing, explaining the title. Don't think there's any explanation needed for this one. Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Reference to what happened Sunday. The Oscars, Chris Rock getting slapped by Will Smith. Another Smith here, Rob Smith, brings up an excellent point about black male stereotypes. You know, we saw what we saw. The guy was not defending his wife's honor. It was a joke. It was, I don't even think it was like a joke about a sensitive nature. It just was what it was. I mean, if you go to a comedy play, comedy theater or whatever you want to call them, I'm sure there's a better word for it. But if you go to one of those, you know, and you show up with an easily identified feature, you know, comedian is probably going to lay into you as he's working through his material, you know. I used to go to the Ice House a lot, and, you know, comedians would go off on people. You know, that's what happens. That's comedy, you know. I don't think what he said was offensive. But the fallout has certainly been fun. Twitter hires Will Smith to slap comedians who tell jokes they don't like. Even Jim Carrey blasts it. Hollywood is just spineless en masse. You know, they applauded him. You know, they justify bad behavior. You know, that's what Hollywood does nowadays. You know, they're elites. They're not affected by their policies. They're not affected by the things that they say. You know, and Will Smith, you know, he's a Scientologist. You know, strike one. Willow, strike two. Jaden, strike three. There you go. Just breathe. Will Smith, keep my wife's name out your mouth. Jada Pinkett's mouth. Oh, man. Yeah. About sums it up. I'm not a biologist, but Will Smith hits like a girl. Look at that. That's some good callback stuff to last week when we were debating what is a woman. Wow. We really, with all the problems that we're facing, that is got to be one of the dumbest things to focus in on right now. What is a woman? And are you even allowed to ask the question anymore? You know, we're not allowed to ask the questions anymore. The left cannot withstand questions. Okay? I'm sure there's plenty of questions that we could be asking the Republicans. But right now, other than the idiots who are outlawing abortion, you know, we don't have much to really ask them about. You know, I'm not going to sit here and bring up Trump. I try not to bring up Obama. I try not to bring up Clinton, you know, unless it's really appropriate, you know. I don't need to bring up the Bushes and Mr. Reagan back there. There. Yeah, look at that. It takes me a while. But I get there eventually. You know, and we have the media again trying to bring up Trump. Talking about missing 7 hours. You know, oh, what's in those 7 hours? You know, oh, it's going to be the thing that damns him for eternity. Yeah, okay. Turns out there was no 7-hour gap. You know, if one side or the other is wrong, let's talk about it. Let's discuss it. Let's bring up the pros and the cons. You know, we want to discuss the Texas abortion ban. You know, what are the pros? Okay, you save babies. What are the cons? You know, back alley abortions. I mean, let's just talk about things. You know, let's not. CNN used to just report facts. You know, there is no 7-hour gap. So, but, you know, they want to try to make a story where there is no story. They want to slant when there is nothing to slant. So they just lie. Driving an SUV to a private jet to give a speech about how evil capitalism and fossil fuels are. That's, I mean, again, those are the things that people need to take notice of. You know, if a side is telling you that something is bad or evil or destroying the planet, but yet they wholeheartedly are participating in said activity, that's more than hypocritical. It's evidence that it's just a scam. It's just a fraud. You know? I mean, look, I see things about climate change, and I'm not convinced myself that it's man or that man can do anything about it. Okay? But I try to do my part for the planet. I try to reduce everything that I do that's bad for the planet. I try. You know, I give it my all. But, I also don't sit there and preach to people that they need to give up their cars, that they need to switch to something just as bad for the environment as electric vehicles. More on that later. And see, this is another thing that we don't want to talk about this. See, fentanyl has killed over 100,000 Americans in the past year, and this White House thinks climate change is the biggest threat to our country. These people are nuts. What can be done about fentanyl? Well, we could try to stop the flow. We could try to educate the public. You know, do you know that people are putting fentanyl in marijuana? Do you know that people are putting fentanyl in cocaine? Do you know that the crystal meth that you may have done back in your days is not the same as today? Do you know these things? Is the government spending any time or effort? Is Gavin Newsom here in California or other liberal Democrats? No, they're co-signing it. In Portland, they're making these kinds of drugs legal. You can just go ahead and do them. We'll give you a little pissant ticket, and if you want help, we'll offer it to you. But we know the statistics. 1,600 people ticketed, 2 people took them up on rehab. Right? Those are the facts. Okay? And I don't bring them up to besmirch one side or the other. I bring up things like this because people shouldn't be dying of drug overdoses. People shouldn't be getting product that's laced with fentanyl. If you're doing cocaine, you're not prepared for fentanyl. If you do a lot of opiates and things like that, you could take higher doses of fentanyl and other things. But if you're not that person and you get it in a couple lines of coke, you're dead. Okay? And these are the issues. But these are hard issues. These are issues where you can't spare people's feelings. You can't spare people's freedoms. You can't allow people to just sit on the streets and do fentanyl and push fentanyl and sell fentanyl. Or any of these hardcore drugs. I mean, it's insane. They want to legalize mushrooms. I've told the story, I'm sure, but I mean, I thought I was going to have to kill somebody when I was on mushrooms. And they're just allowing these dangerous drugs. They're co-signing it. They're, what's the word? Codependent. Whatever. Here's another one that's probably not going to get too much news, but Hillary Clinton's campaign was fined for lying about the discredited dossier. And they say discredited dossier, and that's being nice, because it was just fake. From start to finish, it was fake. You know, falsifying. See, at least here we're starting to get a little truth, you know. $100,000 fine. I'm sure she doesn't even feel it. She's not going to pay it. It comes through her campaign finances. So that's what people donated money for? A fake document? That's great. That's really great. And while we're trying to impeach Trump or whatever it is that we want to do with Trump or the Chief Justice Thomas, you know, all that bullshit, these people get away with a $100,000 fine. They should never be in politics again. They should be removed from having any say or power in either political party, really. Going back a little bit here to climate change, as we mentioned earlier, you know, We're spending $11 billion, okay, for climate spending in foreign countries. We don't know where the money's going to go. You know how this is, man. You give out all this money, and some of it's going to come back in campaign donations and bribes, and just corruption will eat the money up. But right now, we're struggling to fill up our gas tanks. You know? It's going to affect the cost of everything. Because everything runs on fuel, whether you like it or not. George Takei. I really used to love this guy. I really supported him. But he just brings up things that are just so clickbaity and so wrong. But if you don't want 2023 to be all about impeaching Joe and investigating Hunter's laptop, you have to vote. And apparently vote Democrat. I mean, it's not like the Democrats didn't spend a whole bunch of time, wasted time going after Trump. That's all they did. And then they continue to try to blame him for things. But that shine's wearing off and people aren't buying it. And so now, they're blaming Putin. But, Joe deserves to be impeached. If what's on Hunter's laptop is any indication of what's out there, he may have been selling influence. I wouldn't want to find out that a Republican was selling influence or somebody in the center. If I was in that position, man, I'd just be for America. I wouldn't be for myself. And I think that's what a lot of us saw in Trump, that he was there for himself. Sometimes it's a bad thing. I'll grant you that. Sometimes there was some grandstanding, some wrestling type antics. But I don't think he was there to line his pockets. If I'm proven wrong, I'm proven wrong. I'm willing to accept that. But I didn't see anything. I didn't hear anything. So here's Presley. Speaking of G.I. Jane. Black and Latinx. Yeah. Again, a black woman going ahead and labeling an entire racial group Latinx. Even though they're fine with Hispanic. But you don't like that because it's gendered. It's beyond belief. But they go ahead. Let's go on. Let's push on with this. Are disproportionately criminalized by fair evasion policies. So they want to pass the Freedom to Move Act to grant black and brown riders the freedom to navigate their community without fear. Donald Trump Jr. chimes in. Fear of what? Having to pay for public transportation? If it needs to be subsidized because somebody's on welfare or something like that, fine, subsidize that. But to just say something like, hey, if you're black or brown, you get to ride the subway for free. That's not the America we're trying to get to. It's supposed to be an even playing field for everyone. Okay? Somebody who's not going to pay the fare, they deserve to be hammered by the law. White, black, brown, yellow, doesn't matter. Green, I don't care. TikTok, one of the evil monsters, This is what their moderators are talking about. Death, graphic pornography, and nude children every single day. And they're not given the mental support. So while you are bashing the Florida bill and labeling it the Don't Say Gay bill, meanwhile, over here, TikTok is just a funnel for crap. And their moderators are being broken down mentally. And nobody does anything about it. Nobody seems to care. Nobody seems to care. But if you go back a page, black and brown riders should get to ride the subways for free. Yeah, well, I don't know if that's their proposal. I'm just assuming it is. Either that or they just want to decriminalize fare evasion, and so people will just ride it for free. Whatever. Pick your priorities. But, this lady is talking about that being a member of the 10,000 strong content moderation team for TikTok. And they have to watch all of these horrific videos. And they have to get it right or they lose their job. Underage nude children was a plethora of what I saw. There you go. And they suffer for it. And nobody does anything about it. It's kind of strange. All right, so one of the reasons why I don't support the Democrats at all is because they often engage in things that are a very slippery slope or have unintended consequences. Okay, so to be fair, like we talked about earlier, Texas is going to outlaw abortion, right? Okay, so the unintended consequences are mothers are going to die. They're going to have back alley abortions. They're going to end up being infertile. They're going to end up having, in other states, they're going to have women forced to have rapist babies or babies by family members. That's fucking absurd. And the unintended consequences is just going to be death and misery. Okay? So let's look at one that the Democrats did. We're going to look at a few here. Plastic bag fees and bans have major unintended consequences, a new study shows. And what is that? Well, you look at smaller trash bags, like your hefty trash bag, okay? 4 and 8 gallons went up 120% and 64%. So in other words, people who used to get plastic bags, which were very thin plastic from grocery stores, and put them in trash cans or use them to pick up dog poop when they're walking, are now buying other bags. And they're bigger bags. And there's some proof in that statement that what has happened is an average increase in purchased plastics of 127 pounds per store each month. And this is not a 2-day study. This is 2006 to 2014. That's what they're seeing. They're seeing that we are now consuming more plastic, which, by the way, is a petroleum product. So we'll get to that at some point. But again, those are unintended consequences that don't do anything. How about don't litter? Don't litter. Then the plastic doesn't get where we don't want it. Wow. Simple. But, they're going to say plastic leaches into the ground. So just remember that. Plastics leach into the ground. It gets into the groundwater, and that's why plastic's bad. But as we'll see with electric vehicles, they're going to pollute the water source quicker and more completely with their stupid-ass plans. But before we get to that, we're going to get to another stupid-ass plan. Earlier, I was talking about the Don't Say Gay bill, which is not called, but that's just how everybody references it, so I'm stuck referencing it that way. But a lot of these states are outlawing medical, whether surgical or prescription-based treatments for underage transgender kids, okay? We've seen a rise in that. We've seen a rise in body dysmorphia and all that. And the truth of the matter is that it was a very small percentage. Very famous book out there. I don't remember the title because, but it used to be about a 0.001% of the population had this dysphoria. And it was mostly boys. And now all of a sudden it's jumped. And it's jumped because of society. Because kids that are confused, girls that are tomboys, they are now convinced that they have been born in the wrong body. Okay? I'm not saying every single person who says it is wrong. Okay? I know that this exists. All right? But it does not exist at the numbers that we are currently seeing. And a lot of that is society, sociological pressures, and that's what they read, and that's what their friends and TikTok and other things tell them. So they want to have these surgeries. Now, a lot of people say, well, that's kind of a bad idea. If you can't get a tattoo until you're 18, how can you change your sex at 13? That makes sense. It does. Just off the top of your head, right? That makes sense, okay? But what if there was 22 years of data? Well, there is. There is that data, and we are not paying attention to the data. Last year, Sweden outlawed the use of cross-sex hormones in children after utilizing them for 22 years. Potentially fraught with extensive and irreversible adverse consequences, cardiovascular disease, osteoporosis, infertility, increased cancer risk, and thrombosis. Denmark and France have since followed suit. Yeah, because it's like smoking. There's risk. There's known risk. There's dire consequences to smoking. So that's why we don't let 12-year-olds smoke. You need to be an adult before you start ruining your life. I think that's a very simple operating procedure, SOP, standard operating procedure. If it can ruin your life, you can't do it until you're an adult. Sort of makes sense. Voting, joining the military, owning firearms, smoking, drinking, having sex. Look, all those things can ruin your life. They can end your life. So that's why we make it for adults. Now, children who, as we all went through shit. We all went through identity crises. We did not know what we were. All right? And if you wait until you're 18 to make those kinds of decisions, at least you're closer to a better understanding of who you are as a person. But not Joe Biden. Joe Biden wants the sex change hormones, the sex change operations. He just wants to give the liberals whatever they want. The far left, the extremists, their own 1%. He wants to just give them whatever they want. Despite the fact that we have 22 years, of research out of Sweden, and Sweden said enough is enough. See, part of the problem is we're only allowed to hear from the people who have money in the game or went through this and it was successful. They did feel better about their lives. They did go on for the rest of their lives to have productive, not chronic pain or chronic medical issues or loads of medical debt that ruin their lives. Okay? We don't hear from the bad side. We're not allowed to talk about what can go wrong with this. We're not allowed to talk about, breast removal surgeries and how it could lead to a lifetime of pain medications. And you don't last long when you're on things like Oxycontin. You don't last long. And as we've seen, it's a risk. It is a giant, giant risk. We know this. But yet, we want to plow ahead with it. I think I had it up here somewhere. Where did I? It's coming. I think it went out of order here somewhere. But we're talking about a huge, huge... it was the next slide. We're talking about a huge risk here. They downplay the magnitude of such a decision. Transgender medical treatment could be a dangerous path that shortens the lifespan of patients by 50%. This was the Amsterdam University Medical Center. Amsterdam. It's a pretty liberal place. That's a pretty do as you see fit type of place. And even they're doing it. And look at the kind of numbers they're talking about. 4,600 transgender men and women between 1972 and 2018. 50%. So that is not a decision that should be left in the hands of a 13-year-old. It just shouldn't. And parents should not even have the option of indulging that. Because we don't deal with things on a realistic way. We don't allow counselors, teachers, psychiatrists, whoever it may be, to offer alternate explanations for why somebody might be feeling a certain way. We're not allowed to point out the health risk. Me pointing out the health risk right now will get me labeled transphobic. Really? The fact that I'm trying to protect children, I'm not trying to take away people's rights when they turn 18. Fuck, you want to do this? Go ahead and do it. I'm a smoker. I can't talk about taking health risks. Okay? But I wasn't allowed to smoke at 13. I wasn't allowed to drink at 13. That's all this is. This is about getting it right and doing right by children. Children need to be protected from things. Pure and simple. And if parents aren't going to be the ones to do it, and if doctors aren't going to be the ones to do it, we've gotten to the point where politicians have to do it. I think that's fucking stupid. I think that really shows the intelligence of this country sometimes. And part of the problem are trans activists. Look, they deserve rights. They do not deserve to be marginalized. They do not deserve to be made fun of. They are harassed. They do not deserve to have violence perpetrated on them. They are people. They are Americans. Just like all of us. We all have our thing. Who gives a shit if your thing is different than somebody else's thing? But Caitlyn Jenner brings it up perfectly. I am trans, but I am not a trans activist. Because the movement should not be increasing your ranks. But just like political parties, that's what that community seems to be doing. Protect your ranks. Fight for your ranks. But trying to increase your ranks is kind of weird. Especially when there's health risks. I mean, it's much different. It's much different for other people in that community. If your son or your daughter says that they're gay, support them. Support them. They're not going to be making a decision that will alter the rest of their life. But trans is different. If they start hormones and things like that at 13, at 12, they block puberty, they have surgeries to remove their breasts, come on. You can't go back. Those are big, big decisions. But if you're like Caitlyn, I love her. All right? I don't have a problem with her. I don't have a problem with anybody being trans. As long as you're not taking advantage or taking spots away from women or men, either way it goes. I'm just asking for what I always say, common sense. Right here. Christian Walker here. I'm a male attracted to men, and I'm obsessed with the Florida bill. Anyone who thinks children should be learning about sexuality before they can even do basic multiplication should be investigated by the police. It's one thing to teach people the simple message of Jesus. Love everyone as though they were your neighbor. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they believe. It doesn't matter. Everybody deserves God's love and people's love. We are supposed to be an accepting country, and acceptance is one thing. But allowing stupid shit to happen, can't do it. This means a lot to me because I do support this community. I really do support the LGBT, and I can't do the rest, community. I'm not here to play silly games. I'm here to express love for people, to protect people, to show people that they may be wrong and there's a different way. That's what I want to do. The most disturbing cultural trend in the last few years is the destruction of the innocence of childhood in an attempt to validate insecure adults. Yeah. You know, some of us, we didn't have a lot of freedom when we were kids. We had very strict parents. There was things we could and couldn't do. Things we could or couldn't watch and listen to. And I understand that the backlash is that we're going to become a more permissive parental generation. That's going to happen, okay? But if your main concern is your white girl Instagram page, Bo Burnham, and the fact that you want to brag that you have a pansexual child or a transsexual child or blah, 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 okay, that's fine, okay? But when you take the extra step of transitioning the child for your own pub, that's wrong. And that's what the politicians are trying to fight against. The lawmakers are trying to fight against. Now, I personally think a lot of times they go about it the wrong way. Okay? There's evidence, like we saw in Sweden and in Amsterdam, there's evidence that these are dangerous procedures that have lifelong consequences. That's what should be brought forth. It shouldn't be coming from a place of hate or a place of non-acceptance. And sometimes I feel like that's what it is. You know, sometimes we have good laws and bad deliveries. You know, look at Brandon up there, President Biden. Look at that fucking fool. He's got a bad message and a bad delivery. Okay? So that's why I focus on that side. But, you know, I'm against the way that they phrase things and the fact that they don't just base things on fact. But anyhow, we do another one of these where 2 black female students were identified as culprits in writing racist graffiti that included the N-word. Now, this is where assholes like Smollett need to be summarily punished. We can't have fake shit happening like this. This is not good. This destroys trust. It does. I would condemn it. I would condemn it either way. Either as phony or as a real racist attack. Either way. Stupid. Against it. But, you know, that's what they do. This picture's making the rounds. This dude sums up how we all feel about Biden. Yep. And Gavin Newsom and Gascon and Garcetti. Garcetti, the mayor of LA, probably not going to be the ambassador to India. Apparently, somebody dug something up. Yeah, he had an aide that was sexually harassing people, and Garcetti laughed it off. Yeah, not exactly ambassador material. Well, I don't know anymore. Most of these politicians are a-holes. So earlier we were talking about EVs, and this was an interesting study here. Californians, again, the inspiration for Biden, are averaging only about 5,000 miles of EV use per year. The national average is about 12,000 per year. Why? Because the EV is typically a second vehicle. And the primary owners are highly educated and financially well off and not representative of the vast American middle class or low income folks or those on fixed incomes. Look at some of these statistics. Tesla's 87% white, 8% Hispanic, leaving 5%. That 5% is every single black and every single Asian. And anything else that might be in there. I mean, Arabic, Pacific Islander, but it does not look good. And that's why it's not a doable future. Because look at the numbers. Look at the people who are using them. And one of the reasons is the charging and the possible exposure to bad weather. Because a lot of people don't have a 6-car garage or a 2-car garage or a garage at all. Some people are lucky to have covered parking. But all the people who are out on that park out on the streets, this is not a feasible situation. And we have some evidence to back that up. And instead of paying attention to the evidence, and instead of the news talking about the evidence, we just play along with the fantasy. And we think we're going to end up with a good result. They're homeowners. See right there. In California, the state with almost half the EVs in the entire country, from that limited elite ownership group, there is a growing percentage that are switching back to gasoline. Because it's just not. It's not really that feasible. And more to the point, it's not even green. If you think you are driving a zero-emission vehicle, you're dead fucking wrong. Because every single drop of electricity that you put in your battery, okay, is more than likely coming from fossil fuels. Right now, 40% of our electricity is produced by coal nationwide. So 40% of electric vehicles are running on coal. California might say, oh, we don't use coal, but we buy power. We steal power from other states that might. The thing is, I think the way that we can really sum this up about electric vehicles is until we are producing loads of reliable electricity. Loads of reliable electricity. Electric vehicles are dead. And quite frankly, and I'm sure I can get a lot of arguments on this, the only way that we will ever achieve that is if we go nuclear. That's it. That's what we have right now. Sun, wind, unreliable. Fossil fuels, bad for the environment. Nuclear, it's the best of the options. Solar panels are highly toxic. Look at all of the acids and toxic metals that are used to make solar panels and used to make car batteries and the processes that they go through. They will pollute water tables. They will destroy environments. Because, if you need 27 pounds of nickel for a car battery, you don't just go out in the wild and pick up 27 pounds of nickel. You have to mine a lot of shit and sort through it. And in most of the countries that do that are going to be using coal to make their electricity. Then they're going to have to ship them over here. It's a toxic disaster to go electric. Unless we're going to go nuclear. That's really the way I see it. I don't really know what the argument is for electric vehicles because all of their pros are outweighed by their cons. And again, why aren't we living in a society where that's what the news does? Where our newscasters take the list of the pros, list of the cons, compare them, and we discuss it. And we make informed decisions. Talking about water, this just, California also ranks first when it comes to the most rivers and stream miles listed as impaired for drinking, and third for fish consumption. We are polluting our water at an alarming rate. See that? Indiana has the top of the list, dirtiest waterways, almost 25,000 total miles, impaired for swimming and recreation. Second is Oregon and South Carolina. These are places where you think they'd have their shit together. Florida is just, impaired for swimming and aquatic life, and second for impaired for any use. But why aren't we worrying about water? In California, they want us to wash our plastic bottles before we recycle them. And we are in a severe drought. Water doesn't make them enough money. There's nobody pushing. There's no water lobby. There shouldn't be a water lobby because we all need it to survive. But no. We're going to push solar panels. Okie dokie. We're going to push things that pollute water tables. Oh, okay. Oh, man. Really going about this the wrong way, aren't we? Well, I'm just going to touch on this really quickly. It went out of order. Another problem with EV vehicles that's emerging is after that fire on the Felicity Ace, $500 million went down in the ocean on one ship because electric batteries just keep burning and burning. Isn't that fun? And I was talking about this a little bit earlier. This San Diego Tribune talking about the problems of the crazy street people. None of this used to happen with the meth that the Mexicans used to make back 10 or so years ago. There was not a rapid onset of schizophrenia, a rapid onset of hallucinations. Author Sam Quintos told Urbar. I'm getting a little loopy. But anyhow, this is what I was saying earlier. And this is under the categories of these unintended consequences of allowing people to live on the streets and decriminalizing things. You end up with crazy people smoking this new meth, man. The shit's made with some wacky chemicals from China because no one else is allowed to make them. And again, just keep coming back to it. Biden is going to invoke the Defense Production Act for electrical vehicle battery materials. We're talking millions and millions and millions and millions of tons of Earth's crust going to be dug up to look for these minerals. Sacrificing the environment one way is not the answer. The answer is hybrid, but again, no money in it. Palm Springs is going to give them guaranteed monthly income of up to $900 to transgender and non-binary residents. Good luck sorting that one out, folks. I don't know how you're going to prove that you are or aren't non-binary. But, wow, look at that. I mean, 1% of the population, so maybe they've got a higher one, so a couple percentages the people in Palm Springs are going to get a free ride. $900 a month is not a free ride, especially in Palm Springs. But again, why? Joy Reid pulled a Smollett, saying that after she put out a whole bunch of anti-gay articles, she claimed that she was hacked. And basically, she wasn't. See, the liberals listened to this chick. MSNBC host Joy Reid. Okay? She apologized for the anti-gay articles in 2017. Or, wow, no, she had written them 2007 to 2009 on a blog called The Reid Report. But then they found more. And she said, people fabricated it. All right. California Task Force reparations for direct descendants of enslaved people only. Yeah. So a fraction of the blacks in California are going to get free checks. At least that one, it's easier to prove. Okay? Because for one thing, it's hard to fake being black. I mean, I suppose you could try, like, if you got my skin tone, and just say you got a little bit, but they're going to want paperwork. But again, they have to throw it in that they're overrepresented in the state's prison system. Okay. Make what you want out of those statistics. All right? They're nearly 40% of the state's unhoused population. Okay, make what you want out of those statistics. That doesn't prove to me that they deserve money. We can't go around apologizing for the past. We didn't do anything. We had nothing to do with that. We weren't alive then. And even worse, we were a free state. And under the compromise, the state's fugitive slave law did allow enslaved people to remain under bondage as long as they were later deported to the South. So, in other words, you could come here with your slaves, but you had to leave with your slaves. Okay. We're just going to hand out money right now? Every single person who is not in that top 1% or that top 10% of income earners has something about them. All right? I have been battling demons my entire life, and nobody gives me anything. I would be better off if I just stayed a drunk and an addict. I could collect. But as a sober individual, I got to plow ahead, man. I got to work my ass off, man. Huh. Great. So anyhow, these are some of my favorites of the week. Teachers talking to their students about their personal life. Students, 0% interest. I think it's very true. I think that is. But again, if there's a kid that's struggling with sexual identity or orientation, there should be places to go. But it does not need to be classroom instruction at a young age. Fine, if you want to do it in high school, junior high, whatever, that's great. It's not like kids can't find the information. It's not like there aren't places all over the internet with loving, supporting people who can help people through it. I've seen it with my own daughter. All right? You know, people bash the toxic cultures of video games. But you know what? Through video games, my daughter was saved. Because she met people, oftentimes older people, who had gone through things and shared their stories of triumph. And that got her through. And now she turns around and she does the same thing. But when it comes to old man sitting in the front of the room, teaching a class, most students don't give a shit about their personal life. Neiman Marcus. Marxist. I can't wait to shop with your money. Oh, man. You gotta say, though, she gets a bell. Because, damn, she looks hot right there. Yeah, I want to date her. The only Florida complaint relieving cream. Under Florida law, Ben Gay were forced to rebrand as Ben Straight. It's just kind of funny. Whatever. Corrupting our youth. Popular Disney mascot roaming park without any pants. Yeah, Disney stepping in it big time. They're really, I think, going to find out how big the silent majority really is in the coming months. Because how long does the silent majority stay silent? I know I stopped. White House walks back statement that no one is walking back statements, ripping open hole in space-time continuum. Yeah. Man, you see, when you got a guy that isn't just quite right up here, you got to walk back a lot of statements. I can't believe it's not get it better. Yeah. Man bug, big earring. See? Because, in my generation, we broke through. We started wearing earrings, and then it was like, yeah, who cares if a guy wears earrings? So they're like, well, what if we wear one as big as a lug nut? Jesus. Teachers who insist they're not teaching your kid about sex also weirdly outraged by ban on teaching your kid about sex. Again, that's evidence-based. Why are these teachers going on social media crying about not being able to talk about their personal lives to children? It is concerning. It could be grooming. I don't know. I mean, I think every single day in the news we hear about teachers being pervy or people of authority being pervy. I guess that would be more fair to teachers. So when a bill like this brings up the subject and they're so adamant that they must be allowed to teach about it, it makes you wonder. Amy Schumer horrified to learn that you can now get slapped for bad jokes. I used to like her. And, yeah, no, she's fallen off, but that's funny. And this is what we were talking about. Why can't we just discuss on the news the actual facts of things? They want to rant on about Ukraine, Putin, and Russia, racism, white supremacy, and global warming. But they don't want to discuss the border inflation, foreign policy, energy independence, Afghanistan crime, the Hunter Biden laptop. They don't want to have a frank discussion about what really is important. They want to play along. It's propaganda, and propaganda is a 4-letter word for me. Oh my God. Just taking a pause there for a sec. I'm sorry. I put this one up because somebody actually sent this to me. Somebody I work with, and yeah, I liked it. My generation had Wonder Woman. Because you're old. That's funny. Believe all women. Some women. What's a woman? Now, that's a really, these are the kind of memes that should be making a difference. Because that is very true. They said we had to believe all women at the Kavanaugh. And then they didn't want to believe Amy, even though she didn't even come up with notes. And now our newest nominee is unclear as to what a woman is. Which is, I understand. I think she could probably give you a definition of what a woman is. But, yeah, she's political. It's political to not answer that question. But apparently she answered it wrong by saying biologist. Jen Psaki. Bye-bye, babe. Jen Psaki walks back claims that she ever worked for Biden administration. Yeah, she's going over to MSNBC. She's going to be a mouthpiece there. I'd like to piece her mouth. Yeah. She's been interesting. And she will be missed. Because the next one is probably going to be quite boring. That's going to be sad. And probably not a feisty little redhead. So whatever. If you leave before my next show, goodbye. I'll just say goodbye to you on every show until you're gone. Biden signs the don't say gas bill. Idiot. Yeah, I did that. Look at all that. I mean, really, when you look at those subjects, it's hard. I don't know where the Democrats would argue that they haven't gone up under him. And they're all bad. None of that's good. I don't see unity going up. I don't see American pride going up. I just see that. I can't work with this man. After repeated gaffes, Biden's teleprompter resigns in disgust. Don't even know what to say there. AOC claims she was also slapped by Will Smith at the Oscars, and now she's dead. God, the Babylon Bee is one of the best, if not the best satirists ever on the face of this planet. So, this was my favorite right here, the AOC. It made me laugh out loud at an inappropriate time, but maybe I shouldn't have been on my phone. So I wanted to end on this. I'm a fan of Earl Weber. You've seen our Instagram. We've met Earl Weber. Imagine for a moment you voted for your guy because you hated the other guy, and your guy is now the disaster the other guy told you your guy would be. Boom. I should just mic drop it right here. But I wanted to just bring up one interesting point about this. We need people to calm down the rhetoric and calm down the lies and focus in on the evidence that we have that the left, the far left, the extremists, the Democratic Party is full of bad ideas and a willingness to go to the wall for those bad ideas. They are willing to sink the ship for their bad ideas. They don't want to see evidence. They don't want to have honest, open discussion. They don't want to have a pros and cons list because that's negative to be a con. You should be for everything. But look where it's gotten us. Pay attention to where it's gotten us and realize that simply sticking by your team is not good for anyone. We have a lot of problems in this country right now. We have the homeless crisis. We have a rising crime, rising prices of everything. We have people dying in droves of fentanyl. We have an open border that is just getting worse and worse. And if you're continuing to cheer for it simply because they have a D next to their name, you're a fucking idiot. Copious out. Peace, y'all. $1 bills.